Which books should a person read at least once in their life? The Demon-Haunted World by Carl Sagan. It's basically a treatise/plea on critical thinking and proper application of the scientific method for the good of the species. Here's a quote. I have a foreboding of an America in my children's or grandchildren's time when the United States is a service and information economy, when nearly all the key manufacturing industries have slipped away to other countries, when awesome technological powers are in the hands of a very few, and no one representing the public interest can even grasp the issues, when the people have lost the ability to set their own agendas or knowledgeably question those in authority, when, clutching our crystals and nervously consulting our horoscopes, our critical faculties in decline, unable to distinguish between what feels good and what's true, we slide, almost without noticing, back into superstition and darkness. The Count of Monte Cristo. It is full of strong emotions, and makes you question what is justice. The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde. Reading plays is a great experience, plus this one is hilarious. The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat by Oliver Sacks. No, seriously. It's a non-fiction journal-style book about a psychiatrist, neurologist, and how he dealt with the different problems, illnesses, and issues, and in turn how the patients have been able to adapt and overcome the obstacles. It's very moving, not always easy or pleasant but powerful book. Crime and Punishment. The KGB used Dostoevsky as part of their training for interrogations, and it was so effective that the CIA was convinced they had developed a truth serum. He really knew how to write about the inner workings of the mind. Late edit. For those asking about the source for the KGB story, I picked that up from watching Adam Curtis. Unfortunately I don't remember which of his documentaries it was in, but I would recommend all of his films, which can be found on YouTube. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. A Short History of Nearly Everything by Bill Bryson. All Quiet on the Western Front by Eric Remarque. Catch-22. Hilarious, depressing, couldn't put it down. You Must Learn Snowden's Secret. Marcus Aurelius Meditations. The Very Hungry Caterpillar. Watership Down. I fell in love with it in 6th grade and stole the teacher's copy and never gave it back, sorry Mrs. R. I read that copy to tatters, have bought multiple copies and read them to tatters since. But only the brown cover with the brown bunny on front. As time goes on they're getting harder to find. I have made just about every member of my family read it. I don't even know why I love that book so much. When I open it up and read the first line, a feeling comes over me like I am home. I've recommended Brave New World to everyone I know. Not only does it touch on class hierarchy, which is still present in most societies, either blatantly or subtly, but the book also delves into what happens when we strive for efficiency and forget about some of the most important aspects of what makes us human. For young readers and adults. The Secret Garden. Frances Hodgson Burnett. It's full of mystery, adventure, and life lessons. https://e.wikipedia.org/wiki/the_secret_garden number /media/file:/911s_hyphen secret_garden cover.jpg. The Stranger by Albert Camus. The Trial by Franz Kafka. The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. All three tackle the struggle of a man and the society around him. Mers Alt in his simple otherness and detachment from those around him. Herr K in his suffocation under a society and system that is other and inexplicable to him. Finally, the story of Santiago and the society that determines he has no value. r/book said to read whatever I want. 100 Years of Solitude. The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury. I say this because this is the book that made me realize that I can enjoy reading too. Huge nerd, name gives it away, and I could never get into any novel we ever read in English class. There were a few I enjoyed, like Tom Sawyer and Of Mice and Men. but nothing that I still would think about weeks afterwards. Then I finally take science fiction literature class and Martian Chronicles is the first book up. I read the whole thing in about 2 days. This was the kind of thought-provoking science fiction I loved, as well as the best teacher I've ever had. This book is a series of connected short stories about the colonization of Mars. It's relevant, it's smart, it's funny. It was the first time I ever truly enjoyed reading. After that I spoke to my teacher about other things I might like, huge fantasy nerd too, so he recommended me Jim Butcher's Codex Alera series. It's essentially Avatar: The Last Airbender crossed with A Song of Ice and Fire. That was the first long-form novel series I read, and I'd be sitting in class getting yelled at to stop reading, I was so into it. Butcher's other series, The Dresden Files, is also really good. Sorry for the rant, this book is pretty important to me. Highly recommended to any science fiction fans. Oh, also The Expanse novels, read them. They're fantastic. I just read Dracula and I would strongly recommend it, in part because it's phenomenal and in part because there's a lot of irony in the fact that none of the characters know they're Dracula characters. The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. Very short book, but I believe everyone should read this at least once, especially adults. Shit, I gotta read more than 2K books. Flowers for Algernon. East of Eden. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. There's an unending amount of lenses to analyze the text through, and you can look at so many different issues, alienation, guilt, reproduction even, while reading. Find something new to discuss or think about every time I read. Umberto Eco's The Name of the Rose. It's a murder mystery set in an Italian monastery in 1327. It's dense with historical information and over 500 pages long, and yet it manages to be a page-turner for easily 80% of the book. The remaining 20% is historically interesting if you're into that kind of thing, but can be skipped without losing much in terms of the plot. I'm on my 6th or 7th reread of it right now, and it never gets old. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The Road by Cormac McCarthy. It's much better and darker than the movie. It's probably the closest imagining of what a real apocalypse would be like, with no heroes and no sense of hope. Honestly, this ain't a classic and it doesn't have the literary weight of one, i.e. no one is going to call it a literary masterpiece and it's not something you can use to impress people, but get an anthology of Calvin and Hobbes. I recommend the complete Calvin and Hobbes, which you can find on Amazon. Funny, quaint, sometimes surprisingly deep and sometimes just a reminder of the importance of friendship, this book has it all. Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe. Abraham Lincoln allegedly, upon meeting her, said, "So you're the little woman who wrote the book that started this great war." It's heart-wrenching, powerful, and eye-opening. Definitely a must-read. This'll get buried but don't care, The Master and Margarita is a true work of art. Fascinating and tragic author history as well. Night by Elie Wiesel. The Bell Jar. The Sun Also Rises. The Stranger. They all depress the hell out of me in different ways, so they're not frequent rereads. I have put some thought into this question over the years. Here is a short list of 20 that I've cajoled my kids into reading as they grew up because I felt that there was a life lesson in each. Disclaimer, some of them are age appropriate. Foundation by Isaac Asimov. The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco. Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. The Chrysalids by John Wyndham. To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. The Lord of the Rings trilogy by J.R.R. Tolkien. Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes. Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. 1984 An Animal Farm by George Orwell. Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. Lord of the Flies by William Golding. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert A. Heinlein. 2001, A Space Odyssey by Arthur C. Clarke. The Stand by Stephen King. Jonathan Livingston Seagull. I read it when I was 10, and it changed my life. I don't think it's unfair to call it a young adult book. It's very short, pretty simple, and has a 1960s hippie mentality, but it's also very beautiful. Have you ever felt like you're just a member of a flock? Pecking out your existence among a sea of others and yearning to be something more? You don't have to settle for what the flock wants, and even if they throw you out for chasing your dreams, you can still soar. Fahrenheit 451. Battle Royale. Makes you feel sympathy for even what appears to be the most villainous and cruel person. The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. Lord of the Flies. It really exposes the nature of humanity, and the older you get, the more you understand. Fahrenheit 451 is also a great read. It challenges today's culture. Read it and decide for yourself. The Bluest Eye, Toni Morrison. It makes you cry not just for what the main character suffers, but for the way world works. And it is beautifully written. Green Eggs and Ham. Just wait until you get to the twist at the end. It's really a page-turner. Of Mice and Men. The Giving Tree. The Stranger Camus. The Giver. Dune series. It's glorious. Dune - at least God Emperor. Read Nothing by Brian Herbert and Kevin. I have a fetish for super weapons. J. Anderson. And there is a movie coming out this year based on the first half of Dune. Knowing the source material beforehand is honestly needed. IIRC, X2, many debated before whether Dune was adaptable at all cause the book is dense and quite philosophical, heroes are bad MK, and the Lynch Dune movie had a pamphlet that was handed out to moviegoers, so yeah. I don't necessarily know if it belongs on this list, but I will never stop recommending Invisible Monsters by Chuck Palahniuk. Animal Farm. The His Dark Materials trilogy by Philip Pullman. Tackles issues like free will and religion, all in thrilling fully realized fantasy world. Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. Breakfast of Champions / Kurt Vonnegut. Dune is my favorite novel. All Summer in a Day is the story I think no one has an excuse not to read. Seriously, it's maybe 5 pages long. Just read it and thank me later, but Breakfast of Champions is I think the most important book I've ever read. Vonnegut is a weird, dark, and often silly author, so it's very hard to give a fitting inside of the book jacket synopsis, and a lot of the information I could give you, like every male character is introduced by listing the length and girth of their penis, including Vonnegut himself, wouldn't help you understand the book or why I found it so important. I think the best I can offer you is that it's a book about very flawed people, but the book doesn't judge them for their flaws. Vonnegut treats each of his characters and their flaws with an unconditional positive regard. The book advocates a type of humanism that accepts people as they are, as incredibly complicated, often malfunctioning machines that are trying their hardest. I have tried to carry that humanism with me, and I hope others view me with that same unconditional positive regard. To Kill a Mockingbird. The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. There's actually a book for this question. 1000 books to read before I die. I read Moby Dick when I was around 38, after its 160th anniversary made a big splash, and holy shit, everyone needs to read Moby Dick. I read Billy Budd in high school, I guess largely because it was Melville, but short, and OMG it sucked so bad. Moby Dick is amazing. And the first 75% is kinda a slow meditation on truth and forms of knowing, and then the last 25% is a rip-roaring adventure novel that will leave your heart pounding too hard to sleep. Cannot recommend enough, so fucking good. The Book Thief. Edit, thank you for my first gold, smiley face. The War on Normal People. Life of Pi. Never seen the movie, but the book was amazing. The Perks of Being a Wallflower. One of those books that just captures the overall feeling of being an adolescent while also dealing with mature themes such as rape and mental health. A Child Called It? By David Pelzer. It's so deeply sad. It's an autobiography about one of the most severe child abuse cases in California's history. David Pelzer was brutally beaten and starved by his emotionally unstable, alcoholic mother, who played torturous games that left him nearly dead. Berserk. Pride and Prejudice. The Last Lecture, Randy Pauch. A brilliant book about a professor with cancer who does about everything on his bucket list and leaves little mementos along the way. Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. That is definitely not a book meant for children. For me personally, it helped mentally prepare myself to leave for college. The Pokey Little Puppy. George Orwell's 1984. It stuck with me more than anything I've ever read. It really makes you think. The Unbearable Lightness of Being. I can't believe this hasn't been posted. Love yourself like your life depended on it. Author, Kamal Ravikant. I know the thread is about a book to read at least once in their life. Everyone needs to read this book like 100 times. You need to keep reading this book again and again. A lot of the problems, the suffering, and all the crap that makes life miserable can be solved if we all just stopped hating ourselves, being a bit kinder to ourselves, or just simply loving ourselves. I was out walking today, January 2nd. A woman walked by and muttered, "Disgusting," at me. I consider this projecting from a position of self-hate. I love myself and I wasn't bothered by that woman. I felt sorry for her. I could give her a copy of the book, but she may not read it because of her lack of self-love. I was also driving earlier today and a guy started honking at me while I was making a right turn. I had a green, but I did not make the right turn. There were pedestrians. I normally would fly into a rage because it was inappropriate for someone to try and force me to drive into pedestrians just so that he could get to his destination 2 seconds earlier. I think the book changed me. I let the pedestrians cross safely and I just ignored the honking driver behind me. We need to watch out for each other. If there is any misery in your life, give this book a chance. It has a hideous cover, but the book is amazing and it totally changed my life. The Autobiography of Malcolm X. Homo Deus by Yuval Noah Harari. It's about our society and what he thinks the future will bring. Read an annotated Bible, explanations/translations of what's going on in the sidebar, for an explanation of one of our culture's biggest influences, perhaps the biggest. Belief is not required, maybe not even a good idea. You should just know about it. There are some good ghost stories in there, even some socialist rants, Amos, and Jesus doing a smug Bernie Sanders on the Pharisees. 1984. The Hobbit. Lord of the Rings Trilogy. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Harry Potter. Dune. The Stand. The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. I read it for the first time when I was 13 and it really helped open my eyes and helped me make sense of some things. I think it's essential reading for young women. Men too. Tuesdays with Morrie. Really surprised I haven't seen it on the list yet, but I would add. The Last Lecture by Randy Pauch. When I was still in the classroom, I would use a quarter to teach this book every year to my 7th graders in hopes of teaching empathy, kindness, perseverance, and more. Last couple of years it just didn't have the same effect. I'll give you a few bits from the book. Be the first penguin. You can't control the cards you're dealt, just how you play the hand. Brick walls are put up, not to keep you out, but to show how desperately you want something. I read The Wheel of Time 3 times. I can only recommend it to any fantasy lover. If you are not down to reading 14 books yourself, the audiobook is very great and only 490 hours. The books I enjoyed most and despite being comedy learned a lot from are The Hitchhiker's Guide Through the Galaxy series. Don't panic. And take it easy, my friends. The Book Thief. It's narrated by Death, taking place in Germany during WW2 about a little girl that gets adopted. Amazing. The Outsiders. November 22, 63 by Stephen King. The City of Ember is great. Anything Vonnegut. Metamorphosis, Franz Kafka. It's so ridiculous on the outside but actually has a much deeper meaning, in the fact that humans search for meaning in places that there isn't because we need that support to keep us grounded. Personally hated it but certainly good to analyze. Mists of Avalon. My God, I could not put this book down when I read it in high school. A wonderful perspective from the women in the King Arthur legends. The Shining is a book I just recently read for the first time after 19 years on this earth. Very good. I wasn't really scared by it, but the emotions and suspense it gave me were real. House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danilowski, an amazing work of postmodernism and satire. The bold is intentional, tongue sticking out. Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. The Great Gatsby. Death of a Salesman. The Art of Racing in the Rain by Garth Stein. A great story. Ken Follett, Pillars of the Earth. Edit. It's a historical fiction but it doesn't matter if you're into that or not. Just beautiful writing and one hell of a story. Anyone who has read it will tell you it's a must-read. The Art of War. Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. A boy in the striped pajamas or a monster calls. I had to read that one for English and at the end of the book I was in tears and had to go hug my mum once I calmed down. It was the only time I've cried while reading a book. Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. No book has made me feel such a wide range of emotions in such a short span of time. Never have I related more to the characters involved in the novel. It's a must for people in their late teens, early 20s. The Four Agreements. The Outsiders. Yertle the Turtle by Dr. Seuss. East of Eden. Favorite book ever. Lamb, The Gospel According to Biff Christ's Childhood Pal by Christopher Moore. Funny and moving. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Frank Finney. Something Wicked This Way Comes, Ray Bradbury. Brave New World, Aldous Huxley, it's hilarious. The Midwich Cuckoos, John Wyndham. The Shining, Stephen King. Dracula, Bram Stoker. Dune, Frank Herbert. The Dark, James Herbert. The Wonderful Ice Cream Suit, Ray Bradbury, short story. 1984, George Orwell, Winston Smith is an arsehole, not a hero. The Canterbury Tales, Geoffrey Chaucer. At the Mountains of Madness, H.P. Lovecraft. The Thing on the Doorstep, H.P. Lovecraft, short story. Cool Air, H.P. Lovecraft, short story. The Night of the Hunter, Davis Grubb. Farewell My Lovely, Raymond Chandler. The Silver Locusts, Ray Bradbury. K-Pax, Gene Brewer. The War of the Worlds, H.G. Wells. Ghost Story, Peter Straub. Frankenstein, or The Modern Prometheus, Mary Shelley. Mort, Terry Pratchett. The Sirens of Titan, Kurt Vonnegut. The City and the City, China Mieville. Chucky, John Wyndham. The Day of the Triffids, John Wyndham. And Then There Were None, Agatha Christie. Dead Meat, The Complete Books of Savat, Got. Anne Smith, quite possibly the most unintentionally hilarious bad books ever written. The Books of Blood, Clive Barker, Anthology Vol 1-6. Weed World, Clive Barker, novel. Goldfinger, Ian Fleming. Ishmael,